These are going to be 6 things that I wish that I knew at 20 years old. Actually, if I knew even just one of these 6 things, I think my life would have gone down a radically different path. And let me be the first to say, if you're new to the channel, welcome, and I'm absolutely tickled that you spent a few minutes with me. If you don't know who I am, my name is Ravi Abuvala, founder of Scaling with Systems. And at the ripe old age of 27 years old, I've done some cool things in my life. I've generated over $10 million for myself and my company online. I've generated hundreds of millions of dollars for my clients. I've learned how to fly a plane. I've traveled around the world. And I did all of these things actually just in the last 3 years, because the first 4 years of my 20s, I don't want to say that I wasted, but I will say that I could have done things a little bit differently. So just before I walk through the 6 things that I wish that I knew at 20 years old, let me set the stage of where I actually spent the first few years of my 20s. I am at Florida State. I am spending every single day partying, raging my face off, doing drugs, doing alcohol, and making education in school like one of the smallest, tiniest things at the bottom of my priority list. And listen, don't worry, this video is not going to be like, I wish I went to school. Absolutely, I'm going to talk about something that's a little bit different than that. But what I do want you to understand is that I spent the first few years of my 20s living it up, as most people would say. And I might tell you in a minute whether that was a good idea or a bad idea, but you're just going to have to stick around in order to find out. The first thing that I wish that I knew at 20 years old is that financial ignorance is not an excuse. I don't need to worry about stocks or investing or taxes or inflation. I'll worry about all of that stuff later on. And in reality, the opportunity cost of you deciding that you'll learn it later could be literally millions of dollars by the time you turn 40, 50, or 60 years old. You see, I have invested millions of dollars today, and I now wish, not that I had millions more dollars, I wish that I had invested it earlier. And not doing like crypto day trading and stocks and checking this stuff every single day. But instead, I wish that I dollar cost average into assets that I believed in, such as real estate or Bitcoin or stocks. And I would have let that compound over time. I just never would have touched it. But I just kept on telling myself, oh, it's not important, it's not important, it's not important. Even up to the point that I had $1 million in cash in my bank account. And I thought that that was the coolest thing in the world. And that was because even at 25, when I had my first $1 million, I still was so ignorant, because little did I know that because of inflation and the opportunity cost, that $1 million, I was losing like over $100,000 a year if I had simply invested that into the S&P 500 or real estate or freaking, I wish, Bitcoin early on. Imagine where that money would be today. So I'm not saying you need to be an absolute day trader and just like a whiz at everything. But I wish that when I was 20 years old, I spent just 30 minutes every single morning watching YouTube videos, reading books, listening to podcasts of people that actually could teach me more about stuff like inflation and taxes and investing and compound interest and the S&P 500 and real estate. Because even if I just took a smaller amount back then and started investing it, it would have started flexing my investing muscles so that when the time came that I actually had a little bit more disposable income, I didn't just do what 99% of the population does and leaves it in their bank account, having it eaten away by inflation. And instead, I would have invested it back then and would have had a significant more amount of money today. The second thing that I wish that I knew at 20 years old is to break down problems into their simplest form. Let me explain. I think that the world, the media, and everybody out there has a great way of making things much more complex than they need to be. My personal hypothesis is that when people make things more complex, they can keep you from knowing the truth, and thus they can usually make more money, because usually the difference between someone making more money than somebody else is just one person knowing more than the other person. So if I can make things more confusing for you, then you'll need to pay me in order to learn these things, or you won't be able to get access to the things that I have. So I just wish that when I was 20, I could break down some of the largest problems in my life back then into the simplest forms possible. For example, I really wanted to become a lawyer, right? And that was what I thought was the solution to my problem, which was I wanted to be, successful and rich and powerful and wealthy. So the problem is that I want to be successful, powerful, rich, and wealthy, and I'm not that right now. My complex solution that the mass media, society, and everybody has shoved down my throat is Go in, become a lawyer, and that you'll get all those things from it. And so that was where I really devoted my entire life. If you know a little bit of my story or watching my other YouTube videos, I was literally about to go to law school before I stopped myself and I started my first online business. And really what happened was I started speaking to other lawyers, and they were telling me, like, this is the worst idea you could ever have, because they were asking me, why do you want to become a lawyer? And I told them I just want to be rich and powerful. They said, that's a terrible idea. There's hundreds of other things that you could do to have all those things that didn't involve 3 years of law school, a year of studying for the LSAT, a year studying for the bar, years and years working 70, 80 hours a week doing something you hate, when there's other simpler solutions out there. In addition to that, I also always wanted to start a business. I really did. A lot of people don't know that, but I was always told, hey, first become a lawyer, and then once you get some experience working as a lawyer in the business world, then you start a business. Once again, I'm just so thankful that I have people in my life that were like, that was the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Why not just go ahead and start a business the way that you have it right now? You don't need any experience. You don't need to have any capital. And so I kind of shifted my perspective. And now, even at the point that I'm at right now with like dozens of employees, and my problems are hundreds of times larger in magnitude than they were before, I always try to break it down and what is the simplest solution for this, because really, really world champions at what they do, they always just follow very simple solutions, because simple solutions require very bare minimum brain power and willpower, which we have very limited amounts of. The third thing that I wish that I knew at 20 years old was that in shape is so much more than just looks. So like I said earlier, when I painted you that beautiful backdrop of me in college partying my face off, I talked about how every single day I was drinking, drugs, something along those lines, and I was still going to school, and I was still also working out. Actually, I was working out like 5 to 6 days a week, and I was still, quote unquote, eating clean and hitting my macros. I was eating chicken and rice and broccoli, and I was in great shape. I was actually probably more, quote unquote, diced or shredded, if you guys are in that world, than I am right now. And I used to think that because I look so good, I must be healthy. But one of the things that I have learned after becoming an old man is that those things do not equal that you are healthy or in shape. Actually, I would even argue that some of the guys that you might even look up to on Instagram and on these men's fitness magazines are incredibly unhealthy on the inside of their body. I'll give you a few examples. I used to do drugs, and those drugs used to make me not want to eat food. And because I didn't eat food, that caused me to be more in shape than I am right now. It doesn't mean that I'm healthier, just meant that I had less body fat. In addition to that, I used to do almost no stretching when I was working out a few years ago. I would just go to the gym, literally start lifting heavy weights, and then go home. And because I was young and like Wolverine, it didn't really affect me. And I thought, okay, well, I don't hurt now, so then it's fine. I'm healthy, I'm in shape. And only now that I've become a little bit older and I literally spend hours every single week specifically stretching, do I realize how wrong that idea actually was. Or I would eat junk food or drink alcohol, and I would still wake up in the morning looking just as good as I did the day before. So I also thought, well, this can't be so bad for you because I'm not seeing any repercussions, and my body looks what the mass media wants us to think as healthy, so I must be healthy. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, you may think on the outside that you're totally healthy, but there are plenty of scientific studies out there and proof that shows that the stuff that you're throwing in your body today, you may not feel it, especially when you're 20 years old. But if you just put a little bit of effort into being a little bit healthier, stretching, eating cleaner foods, eating whole foods, things that have come from the earth and not like, just totally shit that's created in a laboratory 2 days before you eat it. If you actually focus on the good stuff, you may not even see the difference. Actually, I rephrase that. You won't see the difference today, but your body will thank you 10, 20, 30, 50 years from now. Now, the fourth thing that I wish that I knew at 20 might ruffle a little bit of feathers, but if you know me, I'm a feather ruffler. And that is that almost nobody around you right now will be with you in 5 to 10 years. Now, if you told me this when I was 20, I would have been shocked, insulted, gobsmacked. Because everybody that I was around at 20 years old, those were my boys. Those were my freaking homies. Those were my fraternity brothers, and I would have killed for them. Not really. I might have. You'll never know. But in reality, I thought that all the people that were around me, they were the people that I was going to go all the way to the top with. And we had all these dreams and ideas of like goals. But if you look back, or at least for me, if I looked back, the reason I was around all those people was because we shared common interest of where we were at that moment, which was in a fraternity house, partying. We loved, girls. We loved drinking. We loved college. And that was the thing that all brought us together right then and there. It wasn't our drive and love and success to grow and for the future. That wasn't what it was. It was the other stuff. So then when one of us or some of us or myself started going to that level up here where you started looking, okay, maybe this stuff's not important, but maybe I want to, start a business. I want to start focusing on my future. I want to start being a little bit different. All of a sudden, you don't have the shared common interests anymore. And so there's this large discrepancy. And now usually one of two things happens. Either these people do a great enough job at convincing you that you're being stupid by coming up here and they bring you back down here, which I would say happens more than 80% of the time, or you are strong enough that you stay away from those naysayers and the people that tell you, oh, that's dumb, you shouldn't be following that, just come and party with me, etc., etc. And you stay away long enough that you actually find another group of friends that are at that level of you at growing, and that becomes your new norm. And that's like a really, really lonely time in my life. And I honestly don't know if I would have had I don't know if I should say guts or, bravado to be by myself in my 20s and quote unquote miss out on my best years, because I was separating myself from the pack by doing something that was that focused. I actually don't think I would have been able to do it, but I see a lot of people, a lot of my clients even doing it themselves, and so hats off to them. But I wish that I knew earlier on that it's okay that the people that you're around right now likely won't be with you in 5 to 10 years, and it's no insult to them, and there's nothing wrong with them. It's just that you guys have different interests, and so you're focused on different things. Now, I'm going to play on your heartstrings a little bit for number 5 here. The 5th thing that I wish that I knew when I was 20 years old was that I needed to focus on building myself first before I looked for something in someone else. What do I mean by that? I mean that I wish that when I was 20 years old, I wasn't just so focused on going out and meeting women and just any woman, right? And I would go to the places that you're not really going to meet a wholesome lady at. I'm sorry if you're watching this and this is where you hang out, like clubs and bars. I would go there and I would meet women, and I somehow expected these women to have all these characteristics that I wanted. And then I would be like, oh, there's no good women out there. Like, oh, women are this, women are that. And then I finally realized a few years ago, like, why the hell would a great woman, the woman that I want to be with, why would they want to be with me, right? It's not just what I want to be with them. Why would that person want to be with me? And in reality, other than my devilishly good looks, I couldn't think of a good reason why. And that forced me to realize, like, okay, instead of me trying to go out there and finding all these things in somebody else, if I focus on building it inside of me, then I will attract that person into my life. And that's actually exactly what's happened. I found an incredibly beautiful, talented, smart, funny woman that's like everything that I've been looking for. And I didn't like go out and seek her. I did the exact opposite. I totally abstained from women for over a year, and I focused on building myself. And then from that, the right ones came attracting me. And that's also really, really relevant if you're talking about even friends and people around you. And the 6th and final thing that I wish that I knew when I was 20 years old was that if I had only smashed the like button on all of Ravi's videos and subscribed to his channel, I would have all of my dreams come true and I would have no problems. And you get the opportunity to do that right now. So go ahead. I'll wait 1 second while you do it. No, but seriously, the 6th thing that I wish that I knew when I was 20 years old was that the saying, you have time, is the biggest trap in the world. I think it's actually one of the most dangerous things that an older person could say to a younger person, because it almost gives them the ability to skirt responsibility. It gives them the ability to skirt chasing after the dreams and to run away from difficult and challenging situations. Because when you say you have time, obviously you're meaning you have time until you have to do hard stuff, until you have a problem, until things quote unquote get real. You have plenty of time. So don't worry, kick back, relax. Things are all good. And there's a great book that I recommend if you're in your 20s to read called The Defining Decade, but it pretty much attacks that premise and says that the stats show that if you wait because you have time in your 20s, and you go do other things instead of focusing on actually developing and growing yourself and chasing after your dreams, that you almost will never, ever be able to achieve the things that you wanted to achieve. And that's not like a morbid statement. It means that by the time you finally come around, so let's say first 5 years of your 20s, you totally ignore the things that you wanted to do. Like you just start, I don't want to say traveling the world, because I know people are going to get really pissed off if I say, traveling the world, but let's just use traveling the world because I don't really care. Let's say that for your first 5 years, your 20s, you're like, I'm traveling, I want to experience the world, I want to travel, and that's all good. I did the exact same thing. All I'm saying is that don't think that you have time, because what happens is that same 5 years that you were traveling the world and doing odd jobs here and there, your competitors and other people that didn't do that focus on becoming the absolute best at one thing. So then you come out of this 5-year sabbatical having really gained no additional skills other than you know how to speak a few additional languages, and you're in the same situation you were 5 years ago, but with less time. And the people that you're competing against in the job market and business market are much more skilled than you because they didn't take that trip or that vacation and they stayed focusing on building their skills. And so then you go back to the same jobs that you were doing at 20 years old, such as waiting or, nursing, or not nursing, but waiting or whatever else that you do when you're 20 years old. Like I used to run beach chairs on the beach, and you're doing those kind of unskilled jobs while you're 25 years old now. And then let's say it takes 2 to 3 to 4 years to finally develop your skills. Well, now you're 28, 29 years old, and you're starting to, talk to a significant other potentially. Maybe you've gotten married. Now you have kids. So then you have a whole nother world of responsibilities that you have to worry about. And if you got triggered by this statement, well, then maybe you should take an inner look, because it shouldn't trigger you. And if it's triggering you, then maybe there's some truth to it, because I have done the travel the world thing. I've been the nomad thing, but I did that after I built a business and I learned a skill set. And then when I did that, I was able to have all the freedom in the world. Now I go on multiple trips a year. I have a plane, and I'm not saying all that stuff to brag to you. I'm saying that because that if I was 20 years old and I started earlier, I would have more time today to do all the things that I really wanted to do and be free than if I had put it off longer and longer and waited until I was 25, 26, 27 to start my business like I did now. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the 6 things that I wish that I knew when I was 20 years old from an apparently crusty, old, negative man. Actually, no, but still, you guys get the idea behind it. I wanted to give this to you because I wish that I watched a YouTube video just like this when I was 20 years old. And if I just took one of those lessons, I know it could have absolutely and drastically changed the trajectory of my life. But the bottom line that I want you to watch this, because I know a lot of you won't even be 20 years old, is that there are no mistakes. There are no regrets. These are things that maybe I wish that I knew when I was 20 years old, but I still absolutely love my life, and I live in the present, and I have so much gratitude for everything that I have now. So if you're 25 and you're 28 and maybe you did the travel thing, or maybe you don't know anything about stocks or finance, and you're like, man, I really wish I learned it back then. There's a great, I think it's a Chinese proverb. The best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The second best time is now. So focus on what you can do right now and be grateful for the opportunities you have. Hopefully you guys got value out of the video. If you did, make sure to comment down below and let me know, because these are a little bit different than the videos that I typically do. Smash that like button, hit subscribe. And if you're interested in learning a little bit more about myself and my companies and how we help other people, you can click some of the links in the description down below. I'll see you guys soon.